One of the most common shots in cinema is the famous close-up, but why do filmmakers continually use it? We're going to look at how the close-up is used to tell the story and evoke emotion in the audience. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, that sounds good and all, but what exactly is a close-up? Excellent question. A close-up is a shot that tightly frames a subject, whether that be a face or pastry, a newspaper or a machine. The possibilities are endless. Close-ups are often used as they are an effective way to show a character's emotional landscape, since one of the main ways people show emotion is through their facial expressions, and the close-up makes us notice a character's subtle facial expressions more than any other shot. While we could see their facial expressions in a wide or medium shot, we'd be less focused on them as we would also look around the setting, and this heightened focus allows the audience to notice subtle facial expressions. All of this helps give us further insight into a character's feelings. Beyond that, having a close-up of something often tells us that the highlighted piece of information is important, given that the filmmaker has chosen to dedicate the entire frame to that thing. They can emphasize key objects that will be relevant later on, or a change in a character's belief that will influence their later behavior. Once you have a close-up, the audience wonders why that piece of information is important, which can engage them in the film and have them try to answer questions that you want them to think about. You have to be very cautious when you do a close-up, because if you do it ineffectively, then you give the audience the wrong impression that something is important when it really isn't. Plus, if it's used very often and doesn't highlight any key information, then the audience assumes that its purpose is not to make us aware of important information. That sucks. No, actually it doesn't, as long as it's your intention to use them for just the purpose of evoking emotion, rather than also trying to tell the audience that the subject you're highlighting is of particular importance. The intensifier of emotions effect of the close-up is a result between the shot and our real-world personal space behavior. Our real-world personal what? Gladly, our friend, the anthropologist Edward Hall, who was the first to postulate about distance zones, left us with some words of wisdom. Personal space is said to have at least two functions. Firstly, a spatial boundary, which serves as a protective function. Having that boundary, for instance, helps us better anticipate an enemy attack before it affects ourselves. This is a biologically rooted survival mechanism that has persisted through evolution. Thank God. The second function is a communication one, and generally by moving closer to someone, we signal our desire to establish closer physical and/or psychological contact with them, and by moving away, we signal a wish to limit intimacy. According to Hall, an intimate distance zone is 0 to 18 inches away, and if the camera is in that range, the close-up would be considered being in the intimate zone. Now, what the heck does this have to do with close-ups? Well, on the protective side, if an entity exhibits qualities that evoke threat, this scale serves as areas of warning, and the closer we are to the intimate zone, the greater the warning, as it makes you more vulnerable to attack. As a result, when we are in the intimate space, we feel the most fear and anxiety because the potential for danger is at the highest level. When we are immersed in the film, we feel like we're in it from the point of view of the camera. So being in a close-up feels like we are actually in the intimacy zone, and that explains why we feel like we're that way when someone cuts to a close-up. So when we see a character in a film that exhibits qualities that evoke threat, we feel many of those same emotions that we do in the real world. Now, because we feel like we're in the film from the point of view of the camera, we can feel as though we are spatially more intimate to certain characters. If it's a scene where another character is getting very physically intimate with someone else, it can help us better empathize with them. The close-up can not only make us feel more intimate to another character, but also communicate that they are being intimate. When a character states something psychologically intimate, the scene often cuts to a close-up of them. In a close-up, we see them from a point of view that makes them seem spatially close. But when a filmmaker cuts to it once a character says something psychologically intimate about themselves, the close-up can be a visual metaphor for how we are getting psychologically more intimate with a character. For example, in this scene from Whiplash, Nicole talks about her troubles.
I I don't know, I guess it's just the people. I don't know if they like me very much. I'm from Arizona, and I think they can see it.
I kind of feel the same way about people at Schaefer.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I don't think they like me too much, but I don't care too much. I think it changes. You know, people change and things work out.
Oh no, I know. I feel really homesick sometimes. I don't know.
As she reveals her personal vulnerabilities to Andrew, the camera cuts to a close-up of her to convey how we are getting more psychologically close to her. We can also get psychologically more intimate with a character through a close-up simply by showing their face in that point of view, as that allows the viewer to form a hypothesis about what's going on in their minds or emotions. Now, let's look at a scene from Silence of the Lambs, which combines both the threatening and psychological intimacy effects of the close-up. In this scene, Clarice feels anxious because she is discussing a traumatic memory. When Hannibal asks her to open up about her traumatic memory, she is initially hesitant to tell him what happened.
You went to live with cousins on a sheep and horse ranch in Montana. And
one morning I just ran away.
We feel Clarice's anxiousness more strongly because the close-up shot of Hannibal, a person who is threatening, makes us feel fear and anxiety. But he then asks more specific questions about it.
not just, Clarice. What set you off? Then something woke you, didn't it? Was it a dream? What was it?
It intensifies her anxiety as she must delve deeper into her memory, at which point the camera zooms in to Lecter, which makes us feel more physically close to him, so we can feel Clarice's heightening anxiousness. On top of that, Lecter's gaze directly into the camera not only reinforces his dominance in the scene, but also makes us further feel Clarice's discomfort. Once she opens up about her memory more deeply, the camera zooms into her from Hannibal's point of view, until it turns into a close-up of her.
I went downstairs, outside. I crept up into the barn. I was so scared to look inside, but I had to.
What did you see, Clarice? What did you see?
Lambs. They were screaming.
The close-up serves as a visual metaphor that Hannibal is getting psychologically closer to Clarice. But the list doesn't just end there. Close-ups can be used to enhance the claustrophobic effect a film can have on its audience. A general definition of claustrophobia is the panicky feeling of dread caused by confinement to a narrow space. There are many films that involve physical claustrophobia, that is, being stuck within a small space. We're talking about Rear Window, Alien, Gravity. In other movies, there's claustrophobia due to a character feeling panicky for feeling stuck in a frame of mind and or mindset. Like we said, when we feel immersed in a film, we feel as though we're seeing it from the vantage point of the camera. So having a close-up intensifies this claustrophobic effect by increasing our sense of physical entrapment. And those are just some of the things close-ups are used for. So, if you want to spice up your story, you know what I'm going to say, better use close-ups.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.